Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the foundation. Welcome back, Guy. We're here in the headquarters for the Life of Learning Foundation here in Merlin, Oregon. Welcome all of you online as well for our Wednesday night class with Guy Finley tonight. If you're new here, the format is Guy will give about a 60-minute talk. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for a Q&A with all of you. And if you're online, and if you're on GoToWebinar, you can speak directly to Guy by just raising your hand, and I'll tell you a little more about that when the time comes, and you can talk and ask questions, give impressions, and have a dialogue. It's always really valuable. If you'd rather write a question in, you can do that in the GoToWebinar question box, or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, or can Instagram do that too? I don't know. There's a chat box, and we will see your question and we'll route it through back to Guy. So anything you'd like to talk about tonight, you can do that in those areas. Also, if you have any technical problems, go to those areas and we'll try to help you the best we can. So once again, welcome tonight. We're going to get started with our topic and key lesson. It's on the screen in front of you and right here in the room. By the way, if you're in the room, turn off your cell phones. Now is a good time to do that. The topic tonight is step out of the anxious rush and into your real life. And the first part of the key lesson reads, the endless and futile effort to complete yourself in a time to come is as hopeless as trying to free yourself from a pressing hunger pain by believing the more time you spend reading the menu of your favorite restaurant, the fuller you're going to feel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to say it's nice to be back. What would you think of someone who kept complaining about their hunger for something, and then you said, well, why don't you go eat something? And you say, well, I read the menu at least 3 times a day. What would you think of somebody like that? We're going to learn a lot this evening, or whatever day or time it is that you're joining us, and you're always welcome. We are quite literally always here in ways that can't even be expressed. You're welcome. Wednesdays are the times we use for using our fellowship, the meeting of minds of a similar order, in order to discuss what is similar to all of our minds that we don't see. We have a tendency as human beings to look at ourselves always as being unique, whether unique in how terrible we are or unique in how wonderful we are, but it doesn't make a difference to the mind that looks at itself. It just likes looking at itself, and so because of that, it's blind to what it actually sees. It's blind to the fact that it doesn't see. That's what we work at here, is to see. So, along that line, who knows the end of this expression? Slow down and smell the roses. Stop and smell the roses. You've heard that, haven't you? Why do you think people kind of understand that without having to think about it? Because you do. You don't have to actually think about that at all. You say, oh yeah, slow down, smell the roses. And then we think to ourselves, what a good thing that would be. But it's actually an esoteric instruction. It's of the world and belongs to the world, belongs to a mind that one day said to itself, you know, you need to slow down, and you know, your life is running out, and you really need to pay attention to these roses, because what do you have besides today? But I would take that one step further with you. But the idea of slow down and smell the roses isn't just the appreciation of the garden that we're walking through. It's really far more important to understand that there is a perpetual garden with all of its growth passing through us. There is never a moment that all of life isn't passing through you as you are given to see and experience it in that moment. Literally never a moment where you are not the vessel into and through which and out of which is pouring an infinite number of impressions, each and every one given to you for the purpose of giving you a new understanding and insight into your own nature, but which for the most part, as I will discuss maybe on Sunday, I'm going to speak about impressions, but which for the most part we have no awareness of all of what's going through us. Try to think for a minute, what would it be like if I didn't know that I was sitting in my office, I was driving my car, I was in the airport as I just recently was, and I had no idea at all of all of the things that were passing through me, and nothing passes through you that doesn't touch something in you. Nothing passes through you that doesn't touch something in you. This, in the truest sense of the word, is the miracle and the mystery of being a human being. Of being given an infinite capacity as a creature to be made conscious of a corresponding character of everything that comes into and through you, and through that relationship and that corresponding intersection of passing life and what it is passing through, to know yourself in a way that you never knew yourself before. You are always, most of you can't wait to get out of here. You're always headed someplace. Like, I'm gone. Imagine your whole life is meant to be spent, oh, you're going to love this, in a permanent vacation. Doesn't that sound good? But the problem is that in order to be on this permanent vacation, where what? I'm never-endingly being given something new to see. That's why I want to go away. I loved it when we go on trips and I see people and they're looking in their face things and that's another whole story. I get into a rant. You have no idea what is happening to human consciousness, that human consciousness in its dark state is complacent with, and you are complacent with it when you have your nose buried in your internet business online, looking at what people are saying and what they're doing, and deriving from all of that action a sense of self that has taken the place of another order of self that's intended to be awakened by a new impression passing through you. Not one thing that comes to you in your photo journals or your relationships with people online is going to make you aware of anything new in yourself until you understand what's going on within yourself, what's passing through you. 8 minutes. I have a very important doctor story to tell you. Doctor's been out of town for a few months now, or at least a few weeks. And so the doctor's back. 5 cents a visit. And you know the doctor stories are intended to pass along a certain amount of information that can't be passed along in any other way. I mean, you can approach this by being strictly didactic and, throwing out exposition. But stories are a lot more fun, aren't they? I think they are. I used to love field trips when I was in school. Yeah, it meant you didn't have to do anything. You just got to go someplace and you didn't have to have people up in your business telling you things you weren't interested in. So Christine is our patient for the last, we'll pick a conservative time, 7,400 years. She's a good patient, a little slow on the uptake. Definitely stubborn, like most of us. And she goes to see the good doctor who represents within you something that is waiting to receive an impression so that through the impression it receives, you might realize a new relationship with an order of intelligence that ordinarily is not available to you. It's there all the time. The doctor's office is always open. She goes to him, and as always, she starts her conversation with him like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I just don't know what to do. I keep visiting you, and I do get valuable information, and I think to myself, I pretty much got this licked. I'm starting to understand. And then no more do I think to myself, I'm starting to understand, than I run into a situation where it makes it so evident to me that apparently, whatever it is that I'm thinking I know hasn't gotten through to the rest of me. Because I'm taken over by wild emotions. My body drives me to do things that after it drives, I don't know what to do. He said, well, tell me an example of what's the problem. That's what we come here for. Never to judge you, just to look and see if we can't learn by looking something that we have yet to see. What if the whole of your life is just about what you have yet to see? I'm telling you, that's the truth. It's not a complex issue. With God as my witness, it's not a complex issue. What have I yet to see? But when you actually sincerely say, what have I yet to see? You must sincerely be willing to see what you're given to see in that moment. Because therein lies the difference between awakening and living in a dream. He says, tell me what's going on. Well, he said, I was out to dinner with some people. I love dinner stories, he said, because they always have fascinating facts in them. Well, this is no different. I was out to dinner with some people, and you know me, she said. He said, yes, I do know you. I'm pretty easy to get along with. And as a rule, I like people. Did you notice a little whine in my voice? I like people as a rule, but I don't know. I was sitting there, and then there's one person. I don't know what it is about them. They kind of roll their eyes in a certain way when I say something, and no more do they roll their eyes than I can't stand that person. I never show it. She said, you know, we've talked about that. I always, she said, but I can't stand that person, and this is where I'm going crazy. And then for the rest of the evening, I can't stand myself for being someone who's like that. I'm filled with resentment, and then I sit and regret myself the rest of the meal, telling myself, well, look at you, look what you're like all these years, and you're still carried away by these negative reactions to people. He said, is that it? She said, that's not enough. He said, well, I'd like some more. All right, she said, I was at a family reunion. And I was sitting there, and somebody made a kind of a passive-aggressive comment, and the next thing I know, out of my mouth comes this other passive-aggressive comment. I say something cruel. It was blatantly cruel. I tried not to make it look like it was cruel, but it was intended to tell this person, I'm on to you, or you need to change your tune because it's not resonating with me. I said this cruel thing. And then all night I tossed and turned, hating myself for being someone who's still saying cruel things. Wondering, why am I still like that? Is that it? She said, that's not enough. I've noticed increasingly that I have to have the last word. If I don't have the last word, I can't stand it. And then I realized something. The reason I have to have the last word, and even when I get it, is I can't stop talking to myself about what happened. My mind just goes on and on and on. And I think when I have the last word, that's going to be the last word. It's not the last word, she said. It's like the opening salvo in a war. Or my mind just talks and talks and talks. And then I hate my mind for talking. And then I swear to myself, I'm never going to talk again. And the first thing I do as I'm sitting there is I'm still talking to myself. I'm going to lose my mind. He said, you don't have far to go, Christine, and that's a good thing. You don't even need to have medical tests today because Guy has to keep going with his talk. Aren't you relieved? He said, I know what the problem is. It's a rather instantaneous diagnosis. Do you want to know what it is? Hello? Yes. Let me ask you, did I describe anybody that you know? He said you have MCS. MCS. Because, well, it sounds like something terrible, doesn't it? And actually, it is terrible. Because she mistook it. Multiple? Me? No. He said MCS. Multiple compulsion syndrome. Multiple compulsion syndrome. The futile attempt to bring an end to a fear that is born out of an unconscious level of mind that wants and doesn't want at the same time, but never sees both in the same moment. I'm not sure I understand. He said, well, you explain it to me. Wants and not wants. You wanted to say that thing at the dinner table, didn't you? Well, no, I didn't. Well, I don't understand. You said it. Something in you wanted to say it, didn't it? I'm talking to Christine now, yes or no? And when you said it, what happened after you said it? I felt bad. So you wanted to say it, and then you didn't want to say it. Is that what you're saying? Hello? Yes. So you made a cruel comment, and after you made the cruel comment, you wanted to make it or you wouldn't have made it. And then apparently you wanted to hate yourself after you made the comment. Is that not a consciousness divided up into a mind that wants and doesn't want at the same time, but never sees itself at the same time? Isn't that the description of that mind? Yes. Class is over. You never see who's talking. You only are identified with the voice that you're given in that moment that wants to express what is compelled to express, because this is multiple compulsion syndrome, compelled to say what it said, and then compelled to regret and resent itself for its own compulsion. So what do you think Christine said? Hello? How do I stop? What must I do? Because I can't argue with you, doctor. You describe not just me when I'm with people, you describe me when I'm with myself. I can have this idea about where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do, and I'm committed to it, and within a heartbeat, I'm already in the other side of it thinking to myself, well, that's not going to work. Now what will happen if that doesn't go the way I want it to go? How do I stop that? You can write down this. It's not a key lesson, but it is the basis of our study, and then we're going to build a list together, you and I. He said to her, you must become more interested in discovering the truth of yourself than you are persuaded to try and protect who and what given to believe you are. Believe in. Believe that you are at least doing the right thing. And conversely, no regret comes to me about what I said that I believe was true that isn't questioned after I experience the outcome of making that statement or carrying out that action. Please. Experience the evidence of a level of consciousness, of being, to use that word, that it cannot see in any given moment, that its compulsion to do, say, or act on one hand, obsession that it doesn't know that it has on the other hand. The definition of compulsion is interesting. It is to be driven. It is. Now, Because through the study of psychology, we might gain a little bit of distance between our habitual psyche and the understanding of something, then it's compelled to judge itself, yes or no? And what I'm interested with you here is to first make it clear, we are not going to judge ourselves. This is not about judging ourselves. Because you and I both know that you and all of us have secret compulsions. Yes or no? Things we don't want anybody to know. Lay in bed and torment us. Appetites. Things that pass through our mind. A man who and to think about what to do to get rid of that pain. So that compulsion. Do you understand? This isn't complicated. I'm obsessed with ambition. Duck. Who had vaults and vaults of gold coins, but it was never enough. He was obsessed. Because of his obsession, he was compelled to give himself more of what never made him content. So his compulsion was an answer to his obsession. Do you understand that? That's how obsession is answered, is through compulsion. Now, if you can put two, not be obsessed with something, one thing somebody said to you, yes or no? Prior to this work, for most of you, someone can say one thing and you'll be so obsessed with it you can't. Who is in there resisting the obsession of my own mind? As if what I'm resisting and what I'm obsessed with are two different things, and they're not, are they? So we are not here to judge ourselves in any stretch of the imagination, but to study what it is inside of us that we can't see hurts so. Any form of compulsion means being driven to do something that in the coercion I am in is the pain of conflict. I don't know if you can follow me. Compulsion hides the pain of conflict. I'm compelled to eat. The reason I'm compelled to eat is because I am in perpetual conflict. I'm not happy with what I have. I'm not happy with who I am. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And the way that I deal with all of that fear and sense of inadequacy is through the compulsion that hides from me as I'm going through it. The fact that the real problem, the real compulsion belongs to a consciousness trying to bring an end to its own pain, and it can't do it. When you're sitting and thinking about what went wrong and what you have to do and why you are the way you are you not trying to bring an end to the pain that you're in? So you are, through resistance without seeing it, saying to yourself, if I could just get rid of this pain, I would finally be okay. And I feel compelled to do this. I'm being driven to try and bring an end to the pain of being driven. Do you see it? So we're not talking now about judging ourselves, saying, what can I learn about a consciousness that can't see itself? One day those words will be pure beauty to you. I don't know if they are, if you understand them. One day I will be able to see a consciousness that cannot see itself. In that is your liberation. The awareness of a mind that is asleep to itself is the beginning of the end of your servitude to its compulsions. You ready to go to work? We're going to build a list. Can we bring up the list master? Here's the list. It is not uncommon for me, especially when finding myself thrust in the midst of uncertain. It's not coming up. Just on this board, just for the streaming people? Yeah, streaming people can see it. Okay. We'll have to work that out, because when we have these Wednesdays, I want people to see it so it'll settle in. There it is. Look at that. Ask and you receive. It is not uncommon for me, especially when finding myself thrust into the midst of certain unexpected circumstances, to feel compelled to... Boy, Dana, you didn't need a heartbeat, did you? Let me prime the pump a little bit, and then we're going to have Dana come up and fill out the entire list. I feel compelled to be anxious. This isn't going the way it's supposed to go. Or something's coming. Notice something's coming. And I've tried to be prepared for it, but I'm not. And when it looks like something's coming that I'm not prepared for, what happens to me? I get anxious. And when I'm anxious, what am I compelled? First, I'm compelled to feel the anxiety. Do you see it or not? And when I'm compelled to feel the anxiety, then what am I compelled to do? Fix it. One more, Dana. Don't get too anxious. I'm compelled to lie. That just comes out of my mouth. I don't even think to myself, I'm going to lie. I just lie. Words come out of my mouth that make sure that whatever it is that's happening isn't going to incriminate me in any way whatsoever, but rather perhaps make me shine. I just lie. Do you or do you not? I hope that you're brave enough to at least see you do. When you put what you call forward a brave face, I'm not going to let them see me sweating. You're telling a lie. And it isn't for the sake of the person that you're with. It's so the person that you're with sees you the way you imagine yourself to be. Which means you feel a threat whenever you are exhibiting behavior that is unlike what others think you should be like. Yes or no, please? All right, let's bring you in. I've got a whole list, but looks like I've got a bunch of compulsive hands in the air. Dana. She said, I feel compelled to jump to conclusions. That's a good one, isn't it? Anybody here just jump to conclusions? It's uncanny, actually. Terry. I am a compulsive complainer. I don't even need you to be around me. I can just sit there and run my complaints right down the list. Let me go to the board. Ian, I feel compelled to defend. And this is a big one, and we're going to get to this in the talk. I feel compelled to explain myself. Sweet God, one day it will be the most distasteful thing in the whole world to you to utter one word in your own defense. On the board, Julie, I feel compelled to go shopping. It's not funny. I'll give you the synonyms for shopping. I feel compelled to distract myself at any and all costs, which is the same as saying I feel compelled to deny the experience of myself, so I'm compelled to imagine another experience that won't have the unwanted experience of myself in it. That's the compulsion to distract yourself. Randall, compelled to make you see me in a certain way. Absolutely. In the room. John.
Say no.
He said, I feel compelled to say no. I'll translate it. I'm compelled to be negative. I feel compulsion in the moment where you've asked me to do something to say no to it. It's really the first word that comes out of my mouth when you ask me for something. It's just a summary no. I'm a great big summary no. How many of you are a great big summary no? And we say and feel no long before there is a sense, before I'm there even knowing what you could just look at me, no. In the room, please. Ellen.
Withdraw into myself.
I feel compelled to put my head in the sand and feel sorry for myself. Compulsive self-pity, yes or no? Compulsive guilt. Barbara.
Get impatient.
I am compulsively impatient. Now, when I'm compulsively impatient, what does it mean exactly? What does it mean if I'm compulsively impatient? It means that before you have even done something, I have a demand on the moment. Do you see yes and no here? I have a demand I don't know I meet you with, and when you don't meet the moment with what I've demanded, I am instantaneously impatient. But the impatience, which is the no to you, doesn't exist without the yes I have to what I demand, but I don't know that I come in the moment like that. Yes? Anybody else in the room? Debbie?
Punish.
This is a big one. I feel I am compelled to punish anyone who doesn't live up to my standard. Yes or no? And I don't have to even do it outwardly. I can just give you Debbie's look. Over on the board, I'm ignoring our friends. Ian, I'm compelled to end the perceived conflict by any means possible. I'm compelled to make sure the boat doesn't rock. I'm a compulsive peacemaker. Oh, one day you will be so glad to end that. Roger.
I'm compelled to avoid these situations.
I am a compulsive avoider of anything that is remotely uncomfortable to me. Deb.
I feel compelled to be confused when something comes up. I don't know if that's really...
She said compulsively confused. It isn't compulsive confusion. It is the love of confusion that compels you, to give you that sense of self, that terrible sense of self. On the board here, okay, Leah.
On Instagram, teach others.
On Instagram.
They're saying
From Instagram, somebody says, yes, I'm a compulsive Christ. Buddha is my compulsive nature, which is quite the oxymoron, isn't it? I mean, talk about something upside down. I'm compelled to teach you how to be like me. Gina, Deborah, compelled to feel invisible, make myself invisible. Rebecca, compelled with overburdening myself to resolve the issue. This is an interesting compulsion. First, I imagine all that I need to do is connected to ambition. I imagine everything I need to do to make sure that everyone in the whole world, including myself, sees me the way that I need to be seen so that I can love myself and really feel like I am Christ or Buddha or Berkshire, whatever. And then for the compulsion is the fear. And that's really what the compulsion is. All forms of compulsion are born of fear. There isn't one form of it that isn't the form of fear, that isn't the aspect of fear. Why do I overeat if I'm compelled to overeat? For the fear of being empty, for the fear of not having the familiar sense of self. How many of you feel compelled to jump through the hoop to make sure that you are the lion of all means? You understand what I'm saying? Compelled to get it. How many of you are compelled to get it done? How many of you are compelled to go to sleep? So there were so many that we didn't get to, but I need to go on. But that's a pretty good list. Did anybody mention any compulsions here that you don't have some form of in you? Yes or no? So are they my compulsions? And yet I'm compelled to feel guilty, am I not, about my particular compulsion, because you don't know how painful my compulsions are. Yes? I'm answering questions before they get asked tonight. Is there anything about compulsion? Can anything about compulsion be considered efficient or productive? Can it? Come on, I want to know, because I'm going to hear this. Well, what about, I'm a go-getter. I've got my nose to the grindstone. I'm making something of myself. So yeah, I'm compulsive, but it's productive compulsion. It's coming. It's in everybody's mind. We find ways to justify this condition in us. I'm compulsive with what I do because I have to take care of all these people in my life. Is there anything kind in a compulsive human being? Or is the nature of compulsion, for instance, saying yes when I should say no? How about that one for nobody brought up? I'm compelled to enable people. Is there any good enabling people? Well, why would I do it? We've been looking at it. Fear. Yes or no? Fear. Fear of what? If I don't do what you expect me to do so that you will see me as I need to be seen and establish the identity I have of myself, then I'm going to lose something terrible. So the compulsion to say yes when I want to say no is actually born out of a consciousness terrified of what it would become and experience if suddenly it cut everybody off or cut itself out of where it's enabling people. Do you see it with me, please? And yet, this is the point. Some of you know this already, and yet I'm still compelled. Isn't it extraordinary? Not just you. If there was ever evidence that humanity is compelled to act against itself, look at the massive divisive condition of our country and everything in this world that we're involved with. It is the essence of the compulsion to protect on one hand and on the other to get everything that I need so that I'm safe and free. Forget you. All that matters is me, which in the end is the grand compulsion. I wasn't going to put this in the talk. I plan to cover it later. And I will. Maybe Saturday, Insight Timer. How many times, for instance, Patricia and I flew back from Florida, and as best I am capable, given the energy if I have it, there's no moment where I am not discovering, not me, Guy, but something that wants to understand everything that is passing through it. How in the name of God can there be 50,000 people inside of a building and not one person in that entire building cares about anything other than their own discomfort? That's all they care about. All I think about is myself. I never think to myself, that woman over there is suffering. It doesn't even occur to me to think that someone else is suffering. And you know why? Because I'm too busy compulsively trying to figure out how to change the condition that I'm in so I stop suffering. And that compulsion doesn't care what it does to anyone else around it. All it cares about is itself. That's the main compulsion. And the main compulsion is what? My identity and what keeps it in place. So, just to finish that up, is there any form of productive compulsion? Anybody? Compulsively demanding that others be as I want them to be. And never experiencing the pain, not just of what I'm doing to others, but the fact that the reason that I am demanding that you jump through the hoop and be the way I want you to be is because I'm in terrible pain because of what you aren't confirming in me as being intelligent and good. So that all the time, an incessant form of what? One of the things that didn't come up in our list, compulsively judging. Yes? How am I doing on time? Nice deep breath, transition, ready? we've been hinting at it. What do all of these compulsions have in common? We can see that it's a common unconscious nature, yes? But what do they all have in common? Look at yourself. What causes them? Pick one that you all picked one. What causes them to appear in the moment that they do? Like, let's say I am compulsively insecure, compulsively thinking about myself. When does that start? I'm sitting here having my coffee, talking to you. I'm not aware of any compulsive insecurity that's going to demand that you confirm me. When do compulsions rear their ugly head? Anybody? Virtually any unwanted moment. Now the rub, and it is a rub, and one day you'll understand it in the positive sense of it, because that resistance has tremendous power in it. The rub in that moment is that I have no idea that I'm like that. I don't think to myself, I'm sitting at this dinner table with my friends or family, or that I'm online, or that I'm doing financial business. I don't think to myself when I start doing that I'm anything other than moving forward in an intelligent fashion to ensure that everything that I'm dealing with works out. And then I'll give you an example. Imagine for a minute that you're reading a book. Now, when you're reading a book, I don't care what it is. Some of you like those, what was that? Twilight. Some of you like vampire love stories. God only knows why. It's beyond my mind. These are the living dead, okay? I don't care that they don't eat humans. Anyway, so I'm reading. I'm in the midst of reading something, and I'm with it. I'm so down with the story. And then, because I've read the book before, I'm just reading it again, like I watch reruns, because I just love that stuff. And then somebody changes the story. I'm reading it, and I'm moving along. I'm in line, and then somebody changed the story. Now, you would know in a heartbeat, wouldn't you, that somebody changed the story and that it wasn't what you expected, yes or no? But you don't know in a heartbeat when you're walking down the street or online or talking to others that in the moment that resistance comes up, it's because somebody changed the story. But you don't know. You're reading a story. You actually don't know that it's a finished line in you. That's actually a pretty good way of saying it. A finished line of time in this mind that has already established an identity based on the outcome of something it's imagined about itself, and the split second that anything challenges whatever it is that I've imagined should be happening, then it shouldn't be happening, and the minute it shouldn't be happening, what comes up? Isn't shouldn't be happening in itself a compulsion? So all forms, and this is what we have to see, what's underneath the compulsion, is an unseen rush, a coercion to do what? Every compulsion is an unseen urge to do what? We've been talking about it. What are we trying to do? I want to see to the end of whatever this impending threat is in the moment. Do you think to yourself when you go eat self-destructively, you get on the phone, you go buy stuff, you go argue with people, do you think to yourself when you set out to do that, to straighten somebody out, do you think to yourself in that moment that fear is underneath it? Do you? We don't think fear is underneath it because we're pleasing ourselves. Because all I see is the pleasure. All I see is what I need to do to protect myself. When I'm selling my soul to ensure that a moment or somebody sees me in that moment the way I want to be seen, I don't think to myself that I'm selling my soul. I don't think to myself that I'm afraid. And that fear is what is compelling me to lie, to feel sorry for myself, to act out whatever it is that I'm acting out. The last thing in my mind is that underneath this, prior to that moment that triggers the compulsive behavior, that underneath that there is this psychological body that is divided up without it knowing that it is into want and not want, into yes and to no. And anything that challenges what I want compulsively makes me demand that it's not that way. Anything that I do want compulsively demands that nothing interferes with that. Do you understand this? This is such an important idea. Your work as a man or a woman who wants to develop a soul, your work as a human being who wants to just live a broader, less angry life, depends upon being able to see at once that there is something that keeps going on and on and on that is completely, I'll ask you this way, how quickly would you be up in arms, meaning ready to fight, if someone tried to come into your house and did so, and then at gunpoint made you carry out of your house what they stole from you? What would you be like if you actually, somebody came into your house, robbed you at gunpoint, and then made you carry out the television or the computer or whatever it was, carry your own jewelry and put it in their car? What would you be like? Anybody? Outraged is right. And yet we are entirely complicit anytime something completely alien to our own best interests comes into our world and steals our mind and our heart. Because isn't compulsion stealing from you your life in that moment? And the amazing thing is that here's somebody making you carry out your stuff at gunpoint, and they're explaining to you why it's a good thing for you to do. This is very smart. You're a wise person. Forget that I have a gun on you. That's not important. You're getting exercise. You wanted to divest yourself of these things anyway. You're a good Christian. You're donating to a good cause. I don't care what it is, to try to see there is something in me that convinces me you need to be afraid. You need to make sure these people like you. You need to ensure that your appearance remains intact and nothing, not varnishes it, nothing messes with it. Tarnishes, thank you. Varnish, tarnish, it was close. And so I never stop meeting moments where, without knowing it, my mind is comparing what it sees happening to what has seized it and said, no, that isn't right, or you have to step up here. And if you don't, you're done. And what do I do? Yes, ma'am. Why? We're coming to a close. Why? Because I never learned I don't have to. No one ever, no, I saw mom and dad. I saw my father collapse into alcoholism. I saw my mother become bitter. Isn't bitterness towards people who have hurt you, bitterness towards God, isn't that a form of compulsion? Regretting one's life? Do you know how many people spend their existence on this planet reliving regrets compulsively? And believing that through the compulsive regret they have for what they could or couldn't do or didn't get or was taken from them, believing that the compulsive regret really proves somehow or other that they wish it was other than that when they spend their life invested in the compulsion. And no one said you don't have to be like that. It's quite the opposite in this world, isn't it? You watch the social influencers. They should just call them social flu. It's a disease on the internet. It's very contagious. I want to be an influencer. You are never not being influenced by your own past. And it's not your past, it is the past of this consciousness that we just spend an hour looking into, figuring out how in the name of God is it that I'm constantly compelled the way that I am. Would you agree that anytime I'm being compelled, that it is a form of self-inflicted wound? Which in itself is crazy. Honestly, you get into bed, does your mind leave you? Does your mind quiet when you get into bed? I know it's not. But I think along with my own thoughts, don't I? I actually just go along with the feeling like if I don't think about this, something terrible is going to happen. And nothing more terrible can happen to a human being than being someone who is being compelled to try to straighten out a future that doesn't exist or resolve a past that can't be touched by thought. More importantly, a past that was created by being in thought when it took place. And to spend your life in a dark dream like that. How does that keep going on unseen? We're getting to the last compulsion and really the exercise in this talk. How does all of that keep going on unseen? It does go on unseen, does it not? Would you like it to stop? Yes? Then you have to answer my question. How does all of that keep going on? How many times have you been somewhere or with someone and you are suddenly, it feels like a large creature has grabbed your chest and starts to squeeze it? Do you understand what I'm saying? Fear, anxiety, worry, doubt. What am I going to do? How many times has that happened? You can't count them. And yet it keeps going on. How? Now we have some new understanding, I trust, a little bit here tonight. Yeah. So how does that keep going on? What has kept it going now? And then what has to stop so that, like Christine, you can understand what the doctor was telling her, that you need somehow or other to see yes and no at the same time. You need to see want and not want at the same time. Not, I want this, then I hate myself for wanting it. Not, I don't want this, but here's what I do want. You have to see it at the same time. Understood? How do I start seeing it at the same time? We've been leading to this. Somebody take us home. Because there's another form of compulsion that we don't see. And it's the compulsion to justify our compulsions. Can't stop thinking about that person I hate. I never think to myself that not only is it killing me what I'm doing to myself, but that all hating another human being do is prove to me that somehow or other I'm someone who's other than the person that I despise. And yet I'm sitting there despising them, am I not? You must begin to understand and then consciously deny the self-compromising act of justifying the compulsion. Now, we talk without even knowing it about many of the ways that we justify compulsion. Isn't hating myself a justification? Isn't it thinking about tomorrow? Isn't that a justification for the compulsion? But when I'm thinking about tomorrow, I'm not aware of the compulsion, am I? I'm aware of what is being promised to me about tomorrow. That's what I see. But all of that is the justification of a consciousness that is divided and in perpetual conflict. And its perpetual conflict isn't because it wants this and somehow or other it has to figure out how to get there. It's because it wants this and it doesn't want that at the same time. Because it hopes for this even as it clings to what it fears may take from it its hope. It is seeing this. If you were to agree as best you can, how many of you suspect you'll be in bed tonight and your mind will start running over something that happened, yes or no? Why does my mind, see, this is the problem. It's natural to us to relive things. There's nothing more unnatural than to relive things. That's all I know to do. To do what? to get over the life that didn't roll out the way I was supposed to when it went down. So reliving my life is a compulsive act of trying to fix the life I didn't live properly the first time. So my aim is I'm not going to justify this. I'm certainly not going to jump through the hoop. But if I do jump through the hoop, meaning I do cave in and I do start to act compulsively again to do the same thing I've always done, then at least I'm going to try to observe that. I'm going to discover. And to discover, I have to sit back. I have to be present enough to recognize I have been afraid of this, her, him. I have been angry about that and the other for as many times as the condition brings up in this mind the situation that was like it before that I'm still, listen, that I'm still reliving because I'm compulsively trying to escape it. And the mind compulsively trying to escape itself is reincarnating itself, isn't it? Let's bring up the last key lesson and then we'll end the class. Read along with me. The justification of any compulsive act is a kind of unseen kill box. After all, who would agree to enter into any relationship that, even as it delivers on its promise of a pleasure, is secretly increasing our dependency on what in the end is destroying our own highest, truest possibility? Now, do you know what a kill box is? Most of us don't. It's a terminology, I believe it is, in war, where they lead the unwary enemy into a zone where it is set up to destroy them the moment they walk in. That's a kill box. Do you understand the picture? The justification of any act of a compulsive nature is a kill box. You have been led into that moment by a mind that is promising you protection, that is promising you the end of the pain and leading you through the coercion to bring an end to that conflict into a place where you actually believe that's what's going to happen. And with every act stepping into it, you become more dependent on that consciousness to save you from yourself when it's it that has to be, that you need to see and be saved from. That's all we want. What can I see? Can I learn a little bit more about this compulsive nature? Don't judge yourself. Remember what I said, compulsion is a form of judgment, yeah? Just, what can I see? That's all. You do that, and every time you step back enough just to see a little bit more, feel with a little more, how do I say, honesty? Can you think of something you're afraid of in this life? I know that it rotates like a bad merry-go-round with different creatures on it, stuff like that, but here comes a fear. How many times in the moment of that fear have I been compelled to try to figure out how to get rid of my fear? I can't count them, can you? But now I understand that consciousness that is trying to escape a fear it doesn't want first created it. Now I understand that the consciousness trying to escape the fear it doesn't want first was complicit in creating it. To see that at once is the collapse of that haunted house and the beginning of you winning your freedom from this compulsive, unconscious nature. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're ready to get started in just a minute with our question and answer time, and we'll encourage you to be part of that if you'd like. I just have a quick reminder that all these free online talks are sponsored by the nonprofit Life of Learning here in Foundation in Southern Oregon here. And of course, Guy is the director. And if you'd like to help us, please know that every donation you make, no matter the size, helps us to reach out to all the way around the world with these teachings. It's been great. All the different avenues that are available, all of it takes time, and it does take some monetary assistance too. So however you can help us, we'd greatly appreciate it, no matter what size. And you can do that at any time at guyfinley.org/donate. And that particular link is in your chat box right now. So we appreciate that. And also go to that same link, and there's other ways you can help us that actually don't cost you anything. So again, thanks for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started now with our, no, let me make a quick reminder as Guy comes on. Friday's study group at 7 p.m. Pacific. And it's a time where we on Friday nights, we discuss Sunday prior talk, and you still have time. If you saw it or if you'd like to see it again, see what principles you can use and bring into your life that you might be able to share on Friday night. You're all invited. It's just an hour-long class, and it's very valuable. I always say to myself, what's a better thing to do than to study the truth with other people who want to do so? So how do we use our time? So do join us Friday night, and of course Saturday, Guy's Insight Timer, and Sunday our regular class. You'll be getting reminders on all of this. So great. Go ahead now and bring Guy back in, and we'll get started. All right, Guy, do you want to get started, or do you have something you want to say first?
Ready to go.
All right, so if you're on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand. Now's the time. There's a little hand icon that'll bring you up into the queue. Or if you have any written questions, go ahead and put them in the back end there, and we'll read them to Guy as they come up. So no hands in the queue yet. So I have a couple of written questions that came in online, Guy, and the first one is from William, and he says, Guy says, if no one is there, a falling tree does not make a sound and does not even fall. But it does make pressure waves in the air, and forests have fallen trees that no one saw fall. Please clarify.
Well, honestly, William, I think you haven't understood at all what is not my teaching, although it certainly corresponds directly with the notion of mutual dependency, that no self exists independent of itself without everything else around it. The point is that without an observer, nothing is observed. What Buddha was alluding to when he said that that if a tree falls in the wood and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, he was trying to convey this idea that what's the point of an ear without a noise? What's the point of something to see without eyes? They go together. So that you're looking at this through an intellectual construct that's literally formulating ways in which, through what you would call your logic, that it doesn't matter if no one's there, there is something there in the forest that's going to experience the sound waves, the pressure waves from the falling tree. So what you need to understand is that unless there is something there in the forest to experience the sound waves or the pressure, there's no sound wave. There's no pressure. The difference being that the tree that registers the sound wave, or the deer, the bunny, that experiences the sound of the forest, has no awareness of itself at all. So that instead of being what I'm describing as a singularity, when in order to hear something there must be ears, in order to understand something, William, like what I'm describing, it requires recognizing that without a corresponding part of your mind in place to receive the impression of the teaching, there would be no teaching to impress you. Our minds are captives of an unseen duality, William, where everything I think I experience is other than myself. You can't have an experience of anything other than yourself. That's the beauty of the truth. Because to begin to recognize that is the beginning of the end of this mind that is always blaming something outside of itself for the experience of itself. You can't separate what you hear from the hearer. You can't separate what you see from the one that sees. Only as you understand that will this very painful duality, this logic that confirms its own finding through the content of its past, that's the only way it'll ever pass. Deborah's on stage. Doug has a comment.
Hi, I'm Deborah. So I was smiling to myself as you were talking because I can feel myself compulsively trying to stand a certain way so that I presented myself the way I wanted to be seen.
Exactly.
I was giggling to myself because it was so obvious after the talk. This nature is compulsively compulsive. It's unbelievable, like really. And recently I had a couple of pretty big things happen that pushed me, mean situations, and I wanted, this nature wanted so badly to strike back, to get even, and it's always like that. I just saw it more clearly. But through the grace of God, not from anything I did, I didn't, but what I felt the pain of that. Isn't there a saying that you pain the bear, or what's that saying? I don't remember. But anyways, I was paining the bear. Deborah the bear was in pain because she could not compulsively do what she's always done. That's all.
Yeah. Patricia's coming up, but I have a comment first. It might be of some help. I would say, I was 75. This was about 40 years ago. Maybe more than that, actually. Gee.
Say 40.
Oh my God. This was 50 years ago. I was engaged. And I found out that the woman that I loved was lying and cheating, and it was immensely painful. But the reason I'm telling you this is because the impression was so clear, I can still see she was standing on the second floor of an open house, had a set of stairs going up. She was standing on the platform there going into the bedroom, and I was on the stairs. and I could not bring an end to the demand that she explain herself to me. I sat there and I thought, because she was so, it was painful. I mean, she did what she did. So no consequence other than the experience. And all I could do was add to her pain by trying to escape my own through this demand. And by the grace of God, quite literally, I was sitting there like almost out of my body watching this tormented human being. Tormented human being who could not help from his compulsion to have explained to him why, in essence, he wasn't good enough, why he was inadequate to that person, to that relationship. I can still see it. That perspective of oneself is mandatory. It's mandatory. Because you believe, because compulsion convinces you so, that it is you standing the way you're standing, that you assuming the tones that you take, you directing and demanding what you do. It is 100% identification with this dual nature that in the moment can't bear anything that denies it the way it sees itself and thinks it is to be treated and to have people confirm. So that's what I want to say. Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patricia. I've been gone for a month, you all know that, visiting our daughter. And it was driven home to me over and over again what we talk about here and what Guy just got done talking about with William, that everything depends on relationship in the meaning of to see yourself. If you want, you have to have a relationship to see yourself. And I learned more in this month than I have in so long. And the thing about it is, I know you've all experienced this, and I used to always wonder about it. I would be feeling fine at home, and then I would go talk to someone or go out in the world or come here, and I was in an awful state, but I couldn't see it until I was in relationship to other people. And there were parts of me I never could have saw without being in this situation with my daughter. And it just shows you that we are mutually dependent in every way.
Indeed. Over to you, Doug.
All right, we have Beverly in the queue. Guy, let's see if we can get her in. Beverly, I unmuted you. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Guy. Happy New Year.
Hi, Beverly.
Your talk today was very insightful, because if I were to take my hand and be looking at the palm, I cannot see the back of my hand. So you gave me a different perspective of what is really going on the other side.
Yeah.
'Cause I can only see what I see.
Yes.
Which is very, wow. It really is very touching that you did this the way you did, and it's perfect timing. I think that the thing that is setting with me at this moment is like how to let go, how to move on with it, how to accept it. After hearing you, that's where I'm at. I'm like,
Yes.
So, if it's coming from someone else, I'm just the receiver, I guess I would say.
Let me help you see something, ideally, but perhaps the clarity will increase your interest and your willingness to go through this process of discovery as opposed to denying the way that we do the things that challenge us. One of the most amazing things in the world, Beverly, about a person's spiritual work, and I can tell it's already beginning to dawn on you to some extent, is the realization, I'll say this in a couple ways, one fairly facetious, the other not, is the realization that I've been an idiot my entire existence. I actually thought I knew who I was, what this life was for, how to go about making it the way it was supposed to be. And there would be no way that it would even dawn on me, the other way I'm going to say this, is that there is a very beautiful, gentle, ruthless, kind intelligence that we are born within, that we live within, and that is within us, that because its nature is love itself, unity itself, it cannot hurt itself. It cannot act against itself. We don't know anything about that nature, Beverly, but we are called to it. And we are called to it every single time that in the midst of or following some conflict, again, by the grace of God, there's a bitterness on the tongue, an emptiness in the heart, some residue that just rings on in the mind, that the pain that always was used to justify and explain away why we did and said and acted as we did, it eventually begins to ring untrue. It tastes wrong. It's just wrong. And it's not a judgment. There's no you, Beverly, that's deciding I'm going to let go of this. There's no you that decides I'm going to die to myself, not because I want to, but because I can see that's the only intelligent thing to do, is to give myself up. And I don't know how to do it. I don't even know where to begin. But I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that's what's required. And I know it because I'm shown it by that intelligence. And your work is this constant entrance into that intelligence, and that intelligence entering into you because of your willingness for discovery. And it becomes clearer and stronger to you. Your hypocrisy grows to the size of Goliath, and yet in the very enhancement of your own hypocrisy, you're closer to truth. Because now you can see what a nightmare it is to be a liar and a thief and a hypocrite. So it's in this humility that is born of seeing your ignorance that you would not see if it weren't for the grace of the light that shows you where it is that you're caught in this compulsive nature. If all that wasn't there, there'd be no chance for a man or a woman to even begin to think about a life that's divine. So don't try to let go of the compulsion. Don't try to escape the unwanted moments with people based on some principle that you're going to apply in that moment. All of that belongs to this nature that looks into the content of itself and hopes it can resurrect some action that's going to release it from the experience of itself. It is yourself, Beverly, that needs to be let go, not some self that's going to do it. It awaits you, you'll see. That's the beauty of the promise of truth. Over to you, Doug.
All right, let's go next to Rebecca.
Good evening, Guy. Welcome back to the refreshing
The
Pacific
frosty
Northwest.
north.
I just have a comment. I just always appreciate the talks, what Beverly just offered. I mean, just that whole interchange between you and the information provided, just so deeply meaningful. And I'm always just amazed at this life journey that seems absolutely preposterous. Just how this mind does it to itself and finds other ways that, I don't know, just keep going down into a labyrinth. So not to keep droning on and on, but one thing that will keep coming up is, yeah, but gosh, if you've never seen this different way, you've only seen this way, and you're trying, see, there you go, there I go. You're trying to do differently, and just, I keep then going back to, you know what? You just trust that there's difference. And everything you just said about how things look I don't want to use the word futile, but just unsatisfying. There's no escape. I guess that's the thing. There's nowhere to escape to. I feel like I see there's no escape hatch.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll just say is it gains strength from when I look at just historically, folks who have done things, even you doing your work, may that, I'll call it passion, or that may my gift appear to me, and that, I don't know, I'll just leave it at that, because it shouldn't be motivation for anything, but I just want to trust. Just keep trusting and keep doing the work in my comfy little crucible. So, thank you.
All right, Rebecca. This is an intelligent universe. And it is filled with intelligent beings. And the love that you have, or the willingness that you have, to not just ask for these revelations, high and low, light and dark, the shock of them, but your willingness to embrace those moments to the very best of your ability. And eventually you have to understand that's all you have. The judgment of yourself for your failures is the judgment of the content of this unconscious nature that never stops punishing itself for not living up to the image it has of itself. All of that trash has to go away. And then you're just left there, and what you're left there with is an innate love that you didn't put in yourself, and the more you attend to that innate love, the more that love draws to it the innate intelligence it needs to help it succeed in seeing with greater clarity the truth of itself. It's mathematical, but you can't know the math of the divine until you have ultimately run out of all your papers and pencils and all the things that you do to try to scribble an existence for yourself. Then finally you stop doing that, and then things come. They just come, and you'll know they come, and you'll understand why God's strength is made perfect in your weakness. Over to you, Doug.
All right, Guy, we have 2 written questions. We're right about at the bottom of the hour. And the first one comes from Ian. And he asks, how did this compulsive nature appear in me? I was not born with it. I am hoping that if I understand how it came about, that I can understand how to dissolve it and its voice inside of me.
Hi, Ian. This compulsive nature did not appear in you. That's the first mistake. You have appeared in a consciousness that is compulsive because it is divided. It's an important distinction, Ian. It feels like it's in me. Doesn't it feel like it's in you? Well, see, that's the trick. And Rebecca, you think you're going to escape something. That's the trap. There's no you to escape your compulsion. there is an intelligence that can see that you are identified with that mind and take those compulsions to be your own. So you feel like those compulsions are in you, and you've got to do something about them. You don't have to do one, almost said a bad word, you don't have to do one thing about those compulsions other than willingly observe the consciousness that creates the opposites, and you in that crucible batted back and forth trying to change what you're creating every time you resist. That's the description. The work is another story. But at some point, if you have it in you, you can't do anything other than that. My prayer for you is that you can't do anything other than continue as best you can, as conscientiously as possible, to see where it is that you are complicit with your compulsions that you hate. Because the minute I see I'm complicit, for instance, with my fear, that's the end of me being complicit with my fear. That intelligence won't act against itself. And that's the solution. Seeing, not fighting. Struggling to see instead of struggling to prove yourself as someone who knows better. Last question, Doug.
All right, Guy, do you have it in front of you? It's from Mary.
I see a book.
It's a book. It's pretty long, so I'll get started here. And she says, the more I was thinking about being aware of a disturbance and revealing a consciousness related to the disturbance, I realized that what we are looking for is the lower consciousness feeling the disturbance, except we feel we are feeling it because we are so identified with it.
Good.
And it is also the one creating the disturbance.
Good.
By being aware of it, the pain involved, the frustration, anger, and resistance overall, which can be expressed in many ways, such as feeling disrespected, being wronged by others, anger, etc. We are now being one with our higher divine self, which is our true self, on which all these forms of lower consciousness have piled up and cloud up our true self, and we have to consciously let go of those layers and be who we really are. That was the insight I had. Doing this may not be instant. In fact, there is a sensation of a detachment going on both physically and emotionally. I got to scroll up here. But a final effect is freeing. I assume practice will make this easier and more instant as we are able to step out of ourselves and see this every time. In essence, we need to get out of our own way. Any comment is welcome.
Well, I think that you've said it pretty well, Mary. That is an epiphany. And now comes the pithy part, the work. So I will just say this to you, because it's important. She says, I assume practice will make it easier. Practice will not make it easier. Practice will strengthen the necessity for practice. That's what your practice will do. Because each time you practice as best you can, whether you see something or you fail to see something, but you have gone into that moment willing to look at this resistance that produces these experiences. The more you do that, the more you will accumulate, it's a proper word, a certain kind of energy that will not be spent, that won't be scattered. I believe I'm going to talk about gathering and scattering this weekend. It won't be scattered. And when it's not scattered, it has its own effect. And the effect of this energy that isn't scattered is that you will find yourself increasingly in a place where, regardless the unwanted experience of whatever the shock may be about yourself, and I'm coining a phrase here, you reach a place where you are now beyond getting negative about the negativity that you saw. You're no longer negative about the negativity that you saw. That's the proof of separation and the proof of a new understanding that as it grows will allow you to have greater and greater, listen, at once distance between yourself and this dark nature, and at the same time a more certain relationship with with understanding it, all at the same time. Good work, Mary. Good night, everybody.